And we're not meant to control everything in our lives. I think for many of us, our trouble is all about control and not understanding that God has taken care of the obstacles and will take care of the obstacles according to His great plan, not ours. I shared with you a couple weeks ago that we lost our dog, Lucy, and I came home and she had busted out of our electric fence. Never does that. The lightning had scared her away, and so I began searching for her for 6.5 hours. I was telling one of our elders this the other night, and the elder actually said with his wife sitting there, "Man, my wife wouldn't even look for me for 6.5 hours." And she's sitting there, she's like, "That's right. I would close the door, turn off the lights, and set the alarm, and you make your way home." I looked for her for 6.5 hours, and I was driving around in the rain. It was when that rainstorm had come, the thunder and the lightning, and I had my Jeep windows open, the water's pouring in, and I'm crying out, "Lucy! Lucy! Lucy!" And then I would roll up the window and start cussing a little bit, "Lucy!" And then I would go home, hoping she was there, that she'd come back home. And she wasn't there, and I would go in and sit, okay, I've given up my search. And I would sit there. Laura said I looked like Christopher Reeve from Somewhere in Time. I had dark shadows under my eyes. And I was just sitting there, and I was looking out the window. I literally, at one point, I was knocking my fist on the window, and I knew I was being dumb. But not hard or anything, but I was just like, "Lucy, where are you?" And then I just had this feeling inside of me, and I got to go out and look for her. She's out there somewhere. And so I drove all the way to Maryland. I mean, the dog couldn't even get there that far. All the way into Maryland, "Lucy! Lucy!" Neighbors were like, "Would you shut up?" I would come back home, hoping Lucy was there, be full of hope. She wasn't, and I'm not exaggerating. Come back home. She wasn't there. I'd sit in my office. I guess I better work on my sermon tomorrow to do what I get paid to do. I'd go back to the window. "Lucy." Back outside. And I did this 4, 5, 6, 7 times. And Laura was like, it's over now. I even got Emma out. We're walking the golf course. "Lucy, Lucy." And the whole thing was God was actually doing a work in me as I was searching for my dog. He took my dog away. He really did. To animal control, we got her back. But He took her away so that I could have my gods exposed for everybody to see and for all of you to hear about. Control. It's all about control for me. It's all about control. One of our neighbors who goes here was looking for the dog with me, and she said, "You can just trust God. I mean, the dog's going to come back." And I said, "Kathy, I only preach about God's sovereignty. I don't actually practice it." And we had a good laugh, and then I was like, "You know what, though? I mean, that's true. Even in something as silly and as small as this, it's about control." And all of our lives it's about control. And the bottom line is we're only happy when we are in control. And when I got in the car to look for her, I got happier. And when I came home and was out of control, I was sad. I felt I have to be doing something. There comes a point in our lives where we have to say, "Okay, God, you got this. You're in control of this." I mean, think about all the people in the Old Testament here just for a second. Just think about it. Think about Noah here for a second. The Bible tells us he was 500 years old. 500 years old when God comes to him and said, now, we're set in our ways at 70. Yeah. Noah was set in his ways at 500. God comes to him and says, "I want you to build an ark." What's an ark? And I want you to build it so big that 2 of every kind and a whole bunch of other animals will come into the ark. And Noah said, "Well, what about the dinosaurs?" No, he didn't say that. They were already extinct. But Noah says, God then says, it took him 100 years to build the ark. 100 years, at 600, he gets into the ark. At some point, when the rains start falling, even before then, when God says, "Build the ark," and Noah goes to cut down the first tree with his sons, and his sons are complaining. He has to say at that point, when he's cutting the first tree down, "God, you got this. I don't know what I'm doing here, but you got this." Every single person in the Bible is like that. Abraham and Sarah. Abraham's 100 years old. God comes to him and says, "I'm going to keep my promise. You're going to have a son with Sarah." And Abraham laughed, and we're all self-righteous. Why would he ever laugh at God? Have you ever met a 100-year-old person? Have you ever met one? That's why he laughed. They were the same then that they are now. And Sarah laughed at him as well. No, this is impossible. At some point, Abraham and Sarah would say, well, God, I guess you got this. Let's give it a try. Joseph gets thrown in jail because Potiphar's wife accuses him of trying to take advantage of her. It says Joseph was a good-looking guy. He was thrown into slavery by his brothers. At some point, sitting in jail after the men who he had interpreted their dreams forgot about him, he had to sit there and say, God, I guess you got this. I guess you got this. Moses, imagine Moses. Burning bush, leads the Israelites out of Egypt, standing over the Red Sea, raising up his staff. If it were me, I'd have been like this. God, you better have this. Because otherwise, I just look like Harry Potter without the special effects. Some point you have to say, God, you got this. Ruth and Naomi had to say eventually, God, you got this. Much more normal story for us, I think. We can really, really relate to that. They weren't splitting seas apart. They were just grieving and sad. And eventually they had to say, God, you got this. This past week was pretty funny for all of us, wasn't it? I don't remember, what was it, Tuesday when the earth started to shake around us? You know, just this tiny little hurricane, and everybody's on Facebook and Twittering it, and, you know, I was actually on the phone with people out in St. Louis. True story. Some people helped me do sermon research. And I said, I think we're in an earthquake. I always wondered what I would do in an earthquake. I always thought, why don't people run out of the building and go stand in an open field? That's where they're safest. I didn't do any of that. I was like, I think we're in an earthquake. Books are shaking. Laura comes in laughing. She's like, I think this is an earthquake. I was like, where are the kids? Are they okay? And that's what I'll do in an earthquake now. Now I know. Oh my gosh, it's an earthquake. I didn't run or anything. I just sat there and was like, I think this is... And I'm on the phone with the guys in St. Louis and said, I think we're in an earthquake. They're like, do you have to go? I was like, no, I don't think so. He Googled it as we're on the phone. He's like, it's a 5.8. That quickly. Like 30 seconds later. And then this hurricane comes along. Hurricane Irene. It's a Category 3. It's 4,000 miles away. It's going to kill us all. New York's going underwater. It's going to be horrible. New York, New York. Outer Banks, they're going to get hit again. They always get hit. Delaware, you're going to be underwater. There's going to be tidal waves. And Middletown, Delaware, we're 100 miles from the ocean. 100 miles. You know how big that wave would be? And what are we doing? What are we doing? We're going out buying gas and propane, and you're all at Walmart, and we're all in a panic. You're buying grills. We're going to have no electricity for days and days and days. Somebody from India said, we never have electricity. And for us, we're like, what will we do? We're going to spend time together. Oh my gosh, this is going to be horrible. So we're all huddled in our basements. Tornado warning. Tornado warning. So what do we do to help us in our control issues? We all go down to the basement. We take our grills with us and our cell phones. And just in case we're all there for years. Because we're control freaks. And what happens? What happened if a hurricane or a tornado come? What would happen to you? Right? Would you just are you in control at that point? No. You're not in control at that point. You were never in control just because you went to Walmart. Never in control. At some point, you got to sit there and you got to say, when you're watching the news, turn off the news. And just say, God, you got this. You got it. You've always had it. You got this. See, sometimes the obstacles are God-sized. Like a hurricane, like an earthquake, even like the little tiny things in your lives, like who you're going to marry, what your children are going to be like, what kind of career you're going to have if you ever get married. See, they're all God-sized, all the obstacles. They're not just big ones. They're small ones. That's what Ruth is showing us here. So let go of your perceived control and trust in God's sovereignty and His goodness. Trust Him with your children. Trust Him if you're unable to have children. Trust Him in your marriage. Trust Him in your job or lack thereof. Lay down your idols. Put the idols away. Say, God, you got this.